Welcome to the Awakened Collective, where we explore the topics of love, spiritual consciousness, and our divine purpose on this planet. Join us as we uncover the truth that our thoughts shape our reality. Welcome to the Awakened Collective. I'm Rick Gregory, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. So glad that you've decided to join us and listen in. If you're listening from podcast, I always want to remind you when we get started, you're probably getting tired of it, but I never will. You are never, ever separated from your Creator. You never have been, and you never will be. You've never been separated from love. You are the divine extension of your Creator's love on this planet, and we have never been separated from one another. We are like the waves on a sea. The waves rise up for a little while, but where do they go when they're done? They go back to their source. We are one in this, at that place of source, that place of love. I want to tell you this morning that the Awakened Collective podcast is made possible by the Sons of Sobriety Motorcycle Club today. This isn't your average club. No, it's not. Sons of Sobriety was born to kill the stigma, proving that living clean can be fun as hell. We ride for the thrill and the cause. If you're sober, fighting to be, and ready to ride with purpose, this is your crew. Red, black, clean. Sons of Sobriety MC, formed in 2025. And you can call or text Daniel Anderson at 601-672-6591 to join the movement. And it doesn't matter where you're at. If you're listening to this podcast somewhere else in the country, we're in Mississippi. You may not be. Daniel's looking to establish this all over the place. So wherever you're at, reach out and find out about it. And let's get this thing going and help others get into the program and into treatment that may not be able to afford it. It's a great cause. So this morning, we have a very special guest, and I want to let you know that the title of our podcast this morning is Purpose Over Profit, that my guest brought to me, and I think that is just an amazing title. And we have this morning Brittany Denson. I always want to say Denison. I don't know why that is. Brittany Denson. She is a passionate healer and advocate for recovery, who thrives to be a light source amongst those she comes in contact with. She is the founder of Transcending Wellness, LLC, a purpose deeply inspired by her mother's courageous battle with cancer. Through this work, she offers body care, fair trade products like incense, herbal remedies, sea moss gel, wellness shots, and many more products to help align mind, body, and spirit. All Transcending Wellness products are made with USDA certified organic ingredients. Brittany serves as the operations coordinator for Grace House for Women, a supportive program of Grace House, and her new role as peer navigator for Mississippi Harm Reduction Initiative, where she leads as the peer coordinator for the Hinds County Public Health and Safety Team, otherwise known as FAST, P-H-A-S-T, where she helps bridge public health, recovery, and community care with lived experience. Welcome, Brittany.
Hi.
So glad to have you here this morning, and I would love for you to share your story, your journey that led you to your purpose and continues to unfold for you. But first, I was wondering if you would share with our listeners how we met, because it's a prime example of the synchronicity of the universe at work, and I think it's a great way to get started.
I'm so glad you asked me, because if you had not, I was going to ask if I could. So back in 2023, I discovered your podcast. Before even knowing that Daniel was, I guess, the mastermind of all of this, but I knew that he had started this and was so incredibly proud. But I envisioned being on the podcast when I was listening, I think, to episode 3. And I remember in that moment, I was like, if I ever see him and he asks, I'm going to decline. I'm going to say no, and I'll be okay. So, and then you and your husband walked into Roosters and Basils that day, and I was just like, here we go. But, you know, those moments don't surprise me anymore. So, and in the last 2 years, even after my mom died, I told myself I have to dive in head first. So I'm so grateful to have met you.
So glad to have you here. Yeah, we do need to dive in. We all have a story that needs to be told, a story that helps other people, as you know, from rooms of recovery, just sharing our experience, strength, and hope. And if we didn't do that, I don't know where I would be today if it wasn't
Right.
for people sharing their stories that I can relate to and grow from. So get us started. Where did this all begin?
Well, I'll say that with childhood experiences, my relationship with either parent was kind of wonky. But I do know because of the rooms of recovery that they did the best they could. When I was in early recovery, uh, just even accepting this way of life, those first 2 years were really miserable, but my mom was there. And I didn't connect the dots. I knew that she was a new woman, so she had not been in my life from the age of 9 to I think about 24 is when she popped back up in my life. And then later on, whenever I came into recovery, I was 29 years old, and she was there for me. So recovery is what helped us bond. Probably the only thing that we had in common, but because of how the steps work, that resentment was lost, and we focused on those next 7 years of my sobriety, so to speak. But in 2019, my grandmother, my precious grandmother, she passed away. So my mother got into recovery in 2009. When my grandma passed in 2019, for 10 years, my mother took care of my grandmother. And she never had her own place to live. You know, she didn't experience any of that. So when it was time for her to figure out where she wanted to go next, my brother TJ lives in Memphis. I lived in Jackson. At the time, my brother could have provided her with more in Memphis, but more is not what my mom needed. We're originally from Jackson, so she decided to come back to Jackson around old friends and stuff like that. And I do want to mention this. At the time when she did move to Jackson, as far as no coincidences, I was in my very first apartment, and the apartment number was A14. And then when we were finding her a place to live, she went to a set of different apartments, and her apartment ended up being A14.
Wow.
So, but again, even at that time, it didn't surprise me. So, but immediately COVID hit, and she had started developing some health issues. It was first emphysema in 2020. Then in 2021, it was pulmonary fibrosis. 2022, she ended up getting on an oxygen machine. And I will say this, we did form this kind of healthy codependency. So I wanted to go everywhere with her, especially considering how long we didn't have in my life together. So she would go to her lung doctor every 6 months consistently. And then in March of 2023, March 8th, I remember her telling me my friend's going to take me to the appointment. And I said, no, I need to go. So we walked in the doctor's office. When I say me and my mom, we never not laughed. And when we did laugh, it was that gut-wrenching, almost peeing in your pants laugh.
I love those kind.
Yeah, gosh. And that's what we did walking in. I don't even think she realized going to an oncologist for the very first time. I don't even think she realized, because I had no idea. But Baptist Hospital, Dr. Young, who's incredibly kind, when she let us know that, it shifted, like everything shifted. And the doctor walked out, and my mom literally looked at me and said, are you going to meal prep for me? Are you going to help me food shop? And like in that moment, my mom was determined to eat clean ingredients to fight this thing after being told that this was a terminal cancer. But they gave her the options. They said with chemo she would have 2 years. Without it, she would have about 6 months to a year. But unfortunately, she didn't last but 4 months.
Wow.
But I'm incredibly grateful, because if I was not clean and sober today, I would have never had that opportunity. And you mentioned my jobs, just working at Grace House. It was, I mean, when I called the executive director, I let her know what's going on, and she said, go take care of your mom. So for those next 2 months, she lasted 2 months. And I'll say this, I have this little, when my mom first moved to Jackson, I had bought her this crystal, and I remember I'm just going to hold it up. It's in the shape of a heart of rose quartz. She was like, I don't want that thing. I'm not like she.
Little too woo-woo. Yeah.
But I was like, it was cute. It's in the shape of a heart. And she just told me to go put it on the dresser somewhere. So, but she kept it, and she kept it out everywhere she went. But even in her car, I would find it in the car, and I'm like, okay. But so my brother, it was hard for him to get to the house while she was in hospice at my house, and she was waiting for him, and all of that just aligned very well with him coming. And I'll go ahead and mention this. So September 21st of 2023, that her sobriety date is September 21st, 2009. My sponsor came and brought her a cake, a card, a chip, even like she was already in the transitioning process, and my brother made it. And I remember whispering in her ear, like, if you want to go today, it won't make it so sad. And I remember feeling her spirit literally tell me, I'm going to do what I want to do. Like,
yeah.
So, but the thing about the stone, I'd asked my brother's permission if I could just place it over her heart. And it's just so beautiful as far as not worship, but energies and stuff. I can hold on to this and still feel my mom's energy. So, but she ended up passing away the next morning around 7 a.m. So that was in October 2023. After about a month, I started thinking, why am I not going through, why don't I feel grief? But I felt that it was going to hit at some time. It might have not happened at that moment. I wasn't accepting, but I was like, I'm okay. But I need to prepare for when it does hit. And so I started thinking of ways and started meditating and praying about it. So I said, let me go do a semester of college. And I also went to the other fellowship, started that step work process. But I had applied myself. I did the 3 regular classes, 2 fast track classes that semester, and did really well. And I went, it was in March, early March, that I was about to complete. I had completed the last assignment of that semester, and I was going to close my laptop, and Drew, my partner, I DIY my own stuff all the time, and he had stepped into the room, and he was like, can I use some of your body scrub? And I was like, absolutely. And then he turned back around, and he was like, you need to sell this stuff. And I'm like, and at the time, the name Transcending Wellness popped into my head. And we know that when we're not thinking of something, that's spirit's thoughts, not ours. Yep. So, and I know to investigate those thoughts, but I didn't really have to investigate this time. It was almost like a outer body experience that, because in early recovery, I really fantasize. You know, we fantasize a lot in early recovery about being a holistic therapist. And I'm like, that's going to be my practice name and stuff. And so I just opened the laptop back up and opened up Canva and started creating this logo. And it started, and I told Daniel before I came on, like, I haven't really heard the word Zen on this podcast. So I was excited to bring that word. So it started, I visioned the Zen symbol, and I started looking at fonts, and I was like, I remember there's a font named Brittany. So Transcending Wellness is the font. The font name is Brittany, and of course the lotus flower, just the background of what that means, and that's just how the logo got created. And I was like, how simple is that? And so all of a sudden I started getting on Google and TikTok and talking about so once upon a time I was a drug dealer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I can see it.
yeah,
No, I'm just
I'm gonna show you before and after photos. But
yeah.
so, and it's funny because I'm so afraid of guilt today. Like, I want to be so far away from guilt. So with that being said, I know what legitimate business is and legitimate, and I'm like, I know this. I know the sky's is not the limit today. So, so I was like, let me just go ahead and create a legitimate business. And so I just went on the Secretary of State website and formed Transcending Wellness LLC, and didn't limit myself in that moment. But I knew that it was my mom's spirit empowering me. I really, really do. And the business got finalized. I got an email on March 8th of 2024, and that was exactly a year from her diagnosis the previous year. And you can't make this stuff up. And I know when you had asked me about purpose over profit, it all brings me to knowing that today I'm so dependent on spirit, and it's kind of like what the big book tells us, that's how we become independent. And I know what that feels like, and I stand by that, and I can tell others that. And it breaks my heart that others don't know what that feels like. But ever since early recovery, with everything, it's just alignment, one thing after another. And that makes me really, really excited about my future. So, and with Transcending Wellness, I remember when I kind of came back to, in a sense, I was like, okay, God, I was like, one huge thing that I do not want to be in life is too big. I want to stay right-sized. I want to stay as small as possible so I can be beneficial where I'm needed, I guess. And I told my divine source in that moment, like, I want this to have purpose over profit. Like, I don't care if it doesn't go anywhere, because, of course, with organic and clean ingredients, it has a smaller life to it. So, but I stand by that, and I've been pretty amazed at the amount of people who have reached out to me. I do not claim to be some renowned holistic healer, but I do know that with alignment that God brings me who I need to be brought to in connection with. But yeah.
You mentioned the word small, and I mean, I don't see you as small, but what you're sharing to me sounds like humility.
Yeah.
It's I like when you say right-sized. It's staying in that place of humility, which is actually pretty damn big.
Yeah.
It's not ego big, but it's big because the results are big when we stay in a place of humility. You also, I was thinking about your mom, and just I'm sure that you probably think along these lines too, but we carry our parents with us on a cellular level. I mean, we are part of them, And I was just telling Glenn recently, he was, because oftentimes his dad wanted him to get sober in the worst way. And he passed away before Glenn got sober. And, he's like, I wish that my dad could see where I am today. I'm like, he does see
Yeah.
where you are
Yeah.
today. He is experiencing this through you at a cellular level. He is still with you. All of our ancestors are, and we just see that path of reaching those places of freedom. My mom was an alcoholic, and she died of Alzheimer's. But she lived vicariously through her children. She was an amazing singer, and her parents didn't want her to be involved in that. They dragged her out of a piano bar when she was like in her mid-20s because they said, no daughter of ours will be in a place like this, kind of thing. And, it's like you had said at the beginning. You said you understand now that they did the best that they could.
Yeah.
I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on that. Like how, when you say that, what is your thinking around that?
Well, just with my experience, I left. I left home at 15, not of my choosing. I know that. So my mom, once my parents divorced, that was really hard on my mom, and that's where her drugs and alcohol came to play. And out of respect for my dad, because he's still living, I'm not ashamed of the story that has been created for me because I'm living in my truth today. But with his struggles also, and then remarrying, my whole childhood was nothing but trauma. Just trauma. And I have to lay the responsibility on my parents. But I will say that I was a person that completely delved into the steps, to the principles, gained morals and values. I was never a person that regained anything because I never knew what life was supposed to be. So I had the opportunity when I started recovery to create a life of my own. And in doing that, I guess I was about 4 years sober in that apartment. And something came over me to where I just started sending my dad pictures of the food I was cooking. And he would kind of bite back and send me messages. And I will say my dad, he was a great provider. He was just, he didn't have that emotional intelligence, I guess. And meditating and praying on this relationship and doing my step work, I remember my sponsor asking me, can you accept whatever relationship you get with him? Because I hear so many elderly old timers talk about how they don't have relationships with their brother or just people. And I remember thinking like, no, I'm going to get it. Like I'm going to get what I want in a positive sense. So I'm going to have a relationship with my little sister. I'm going to have a relationship with my father, even if it is boring and mundane. So, but in me engaging in my dad kind of forcefully,
Yeah.
because I'm going to get a relationship with my dad. He had text one night, and I know he had been drinking, and he said, was I a bad father? And in that moment, like that resentment and all the questions that I ever needed answers to just lifted in that moment. Like, this is what they're talking about when they talk about we wouldn't treat sick people that way, you know? And now, a little to the left of my brain, I was thinking, is he stupid? You know?
Absolutely.
But then I was just like, wow, like I'm experiencing what these people are talking about, you know? And right then and there, I was like, all right, I'm going to force myself even more on them. And that was in 2020, I believe. Yeah, in 2020. And now, I mean, it took a few years, but I mean, now today, and I told him, I said, if I get an opportunity to say this on this podcast, I am. That man, have you ever heard of methylene blue?
Mm-mm.
It's a woo woo thing, and it's just interesting that my dad, and I don't credit myself, but he has already delved into holistic things.
Wow.
And we talk on the phone for like he won't get off the phone with me. I'm like, will you please let me go? And just the way that he's, I guess the energy of his life has changed. Like it's beautiful how the people we're connected to really do benefit from us. And I don't believe in ever leaving anybody alone. Just I don't mind forcing myself in a positive way on somebody if I think it's going to help them. So,
I mean, when we started doing the work, looking at ourselves, and there was, I right now, I'm estranged from my middle daughter. Um, and, she's in the program, has been sober many more years than I have, and is the reason that I got into the program.
wow.
So it's heartbreaking, and we made our amends, she with me and I with her, and we were best friends. And then it just everything shifted, and I she was sending me these texts that she's not in a good place, and I think she's stepped away from the program. She's still, as far as I know, clean and sober, but doesn't have community. She now lives in the mountains in Colorado with
Wow.
her 3 children, divorced from her husband who lives in China. And we send the kids gifts, and send her birthday cards and things, but she just got into this victim mentality, and her texts were so hateful that I finally had to put an end to it. I mean, they were just awful, and it's the same now with her sister. She's sending hateful texts to her. So, but people will get into those dark places, and it's part of I believe it's part of their journey. You did work on yourself, and when your dad says things like, "Was I a bad dad?" I have to see that as, the word ignore is in the word ignorance.
Yeah.
They were blind to it.
Yeah.
They never did any of the work that we were led to do, evolved to do, or, divinely inspired to do, whatever it may be. And like you said, I will have a relationship, and so won't I, so won't I. And I will sit in meditation and see my daughter on the other side of this, and what it's going to feel like, and what she's going to look like, and be back to her pissing her pants laughing, because
Yeah.
that's what she was good at. And I'm sure still is. And, but holding on to that and believing it, and that sends that energy, because I want to talk for a minute before we get into your products, which I want to hear all about, but about forgiveness and the part that plays in your journey. What does it mean to you?
It's kind of like another process of not just recovery, because the things that I do as far as maintaining my spirituality are things that I did way before my addiction got bad. So I'm just so grateful that I got to pick that back up, and recovery made that stronger for me. But I had done some shadow work before my addiction, and that was on my 14-year-old self. And it was you talk about religious trauma a lot on your podcast, and I really relate and appreciate that. But before my addiction, I did some shadow work, and it always came back to my 14-year-old self. And in that, I discovered my 14-year-old self was saved. That's when I got baptized and saved, and I was so fixated on that. I guess up until the age of 19 or 20, I was living in Memphis, but it was a great self-discovery. And I think then, because like you just said about ignorance being bliss, I guess, I was able to heal from that pretty quickly. Um, Today, I'll have 10 years in December of recovery,
Awesome.
and I feel just as much as 2 years because of this right here. And so I had done some more shadow work in recovery, and I go back to 6-year-old Brittany and um, fully forgiving myself today or then at the time when I was going through that process. It was like I keep trying to protect these little Britneys that endured just so much trauma, but I've allowed everybody's crap. I'm the one, I blamed myself for everybody's crap, you know? And, and doing that, like, we, if anybody's ever done shadow work, I just know my experience, and I know that I didn't then, I have not even now, healed from that because I've chosen not to. I've chosen to forgive myself and understand that none of that was my fault.
That's right.
Anything that has happened to me was not my fault. But the people in my life that tell me it's my fault, then I automatically, because that trauma response, I'm just like, yeah, it is my fault. What can I do to fix it? You know? But shadow work is so meaningful in terms of like forgiving ourselves. And I vow to protect 6-year-old Brittany for the rest of my life. And I know that there's a lot of people who know me personally disagree with that because I need to let go of her, but I can't, you know. And I think as far as my relationship with my dad, as long as he's living, I do think I'll end up letting her go after my dad leaves this world. But in doing that, and with the 12 steps, just being able to learn how to forgive, I had to forgive myself. Like deep down to my core, I knew that the things that happened to me were not my fault. But I always have it in the back of my head thinking, but I could have made the situation better, which isn't true at all,
right.
you know. I know I referenced to you, RuPaul, my inner saboteur. So it's very strong.
Yeah.
But I do need a lot of knowledge from our rooms in recovery, because that is one of the biggest things that I struggle with today. Because people do, you know, intentions go very deep, and when people are so driven by ego, I'm around a lot of people. It's like it's like a two-sided coin. Either they're genuine and they're authentic and they're just loving people, you know, as they have practiced to be, you know, as we have practiced to be. But then there's these other people who are just so ego-driven and so blinded about the potential that they actually do have to change scenarios in their everyday life. And I struggle with that, like, because for me at times I'm just like, God, I wish I was ignorant to the fact of being woke.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah. And yet we need those people too.
yes,
You know, that's it's like we wouldn't know joy if it wasn't for sadness. You know, if all we had was joy all the time, how would we even identify it if we never experienced anything other than that? You know, that's why I was saying on a podcast, I think it was the last one before last, was, you know, in the ether, it's like, you know, in the spirit realm, there's no one cutting you off in traffic. There's no one with an ego, you know, challenging you. And this is the place for those experiences. And for me, those are the things that have helped me to grow. And then forgiveness has been And like you said, forgiving yourself. I wouldn't have forgiveness for anyone if I had not forgiven myself. Um, and for some, it pisses people off when you have forgiven yourself.
Yeah.
But what is there to give away? How can I forgive another and look without judgment to another if I'm living in judgment of myself?
Yeah.
And I choose to see that we have always been forgiven. There has never been a moment that we have not been forgiven.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was raised to believe that we were separate from our source, our creator, the spirit, and that that was out there somewhere and we had to bring it in. And depending on our behavior, then one day we might experience it, another day we don't. And, it's a lot of unraveling and unlearning that has to happen later in life because of some of the things that we've been through. But the good news is that we recognize it. We're not there. I'm not there yet, but we recognize it, and we can do the work and cooperate with it, just as you are doing. So we haven't gotten into, before we get to your products, can we just talk a little bit about Grace House and harm reduction and what
Yeah.
you're doing with them?
Yeah. With the alignment, I was a client at Grace House, and I had gotten my peer support certification in 2019. Went to go work at Hines Behavioral, and I just wanted to throw this little story out there just because of the way that life has flowed and purpose over profit. But I remember asking God, if Hines Behavioral Region 9 was where I needed to be. If not, then I felt like it was time to go somewhere else. And I had went to a noon meeting, and Alice Morgan, the director at the time, came up and was like, I want you to come work for Grace House. And so I thought that was funny. But I've been there for 5 years. Grace House for Women is a 2-year program. It is a supportive service of the main Grace House, and its mission is to house women coming out of, substance abuse. It is a 12-step program. So right now we have 13 apartments. We're housing 32 women, and that's huge. We're a hidden gem. We don't disclose our location. The requirements to be a participant is you are homeless and struggling with an alcohol or drug problem. But it's such a beautiful program, and I'm so grateful to be in that space where it's just the end of somebody's, I guess, learning journey of early recovery before they get out into the real world. So, and being the operations coordinator is meaningful in a sense of having a creative hand on how to help these women even more, because people need transportation. Mental health, physical health is the main priority. And then when you aligned mental health, physical health, and recovery, then you're aligning mind, body, and spirit. And I just think it's just a too good to be true program. And with Mississippi Harm Reduction, I also want to mention this, Angela Mallett, that she's the founder of that initiative, and we went to treatment together. And I just think, I'm throwing out these little curveballs of how things kind of align later on in life. And, but I like to freely give myself, as I should, to organizations as a peer support, because that really that changed my life, doing that training. So, and in doing that, I was invited to a FAST team, and I don't really do it as a title or getting paid or anything. I've been able to help with the recovery events and stuff like that under Mississippi Harm Reduction. So I went to this FAST team meeting, and I liked what they were talking about, and I love utilizing my resources as a resident of Jackson. That makes it even more special because I want to be part of the solution. And I go to that team meeting, and then I get a phone call like, I I want you to get paid for the work that you're doing. I want you to be the peer navigator, and so and that happened. It's kind of like a remote job, and it's a baby in its infancy, and I do hope that it goes somewhere. Right now, setting up to call local fire department, sheriff, police stations to get them to go to a law enforcement training we're having on June 10th at the Regions Center where the Capitol Police Station set up. And I really hope people come out because the stigma around law enforcement and, you know, just mental health and substance abuse, it's got to get better, especially in Jackson. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, people spend more time complaining and bringing up the issues of Jackson, but it's like let's talk more about the solutions, and I think we can finally get somewhere. It might not be the sole solution, but so yeah. But other than that, I just love that I've never applied for one job in recovery. Like never. It's always been somewhere I've received services. I started out working at Friendship Connection, went to treatment there, went to Hines Behavioral, received my mental health services from there, Grace House for Women, went to sober living there, and I just love the beauty of synchronicity
And simplicity.
Yeah,
You know, that is awesome. There's one thing that came to mind as you were just sharing. I just want to throw this out there and get your take on it. But I'm reading several books now by a woman. I mentioned her on my podcast recently. Her name is Caroline Mays, and she is a medical intuitive. And she's a PhD. She works with physicians. She's been doing this now for decades, where she's able to sit with someone who's dealing with a medical issue, but see the trauma and what they've been holding that's affecting them at a cellular level, and that is causing a lot of the disease that they're experiencing.
Yeah.
And working with them, and holistic, which we're going to get into what you're sharing, but holistic products, but having them do that shadow work. She's able to see details of people's lives and share with them what they're holding on to that's causing this illness. And it's been, the stories are just profound. One of them was a gentleman who was in a job. He was a dentist and hated his career, and was in angst every morning getting up and going to work and just could not manage, didn't want to go another day. And he was experiencing physical pain, but had also had trauma and shame and feeling like he had to do this to support his family. There was nothing else he could do. He couldn't follow his passions. And so stifling all of that. And the doctor that said that they tested him for everything, everything came up clean, that he turned to Caroline and asked her what she saw. And she says, he has pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
And the doctor said, no, he doesn't. We tested for that because of where his pain is. It appeared that might be what it is, but he doesn't have it. And she said, but he has the energy of pancreatic cancer. And she met with this gentleman, if I remember correctly, but he wasn't able to give it up. He wasn't able to let it go. And 4 months later, he died of pancreatic cancer. And it's just so much of what we experience in our bodies can come from our emotional issues, our not looking at ourselves, not seeing the root, the shame. Shame is a killer. It's the lowest level on the scale of levels of consciousness, according to David Hawkins. And we can't stay there. It will destroy us. And so his book is about, moving up those levels. But she brought in this one gentleman. This is a good story. This gentleman called her. It was a dad. He said, my son is experiencing medical issues. I don't know what they are. He won't tell me what they are. I really don't think it's medical issues. I think he wants to drop out of law school, and he's just afraid to talk to me about it. He asked her if she would reach out to him, and she said, sir, he's an adult. I'm not going to reach out to him, but you can certainly tell him he can call me. So the dad did. And apparently they didn't have a very close relationship, but the dad did tell his son, can you reach out to this woman? And he reached out to her. They had this conversation, and it turned out that she said, you are HIV positive and
Wow.
you have AIDS. And all that you have been holding in, the shame, the fear, the secrecy, the relationship you have with your dad, it's all playing a part. And so the dad ends up, this is totally unrelated, but the dad ends up calling her back and said, I just had this thought that my son might be dealing with something like being HIV positive. I don't know where that came from. I don't know how to address it, but I just want him to know that I love him and that it's okay. And she said, sir, I'm not going to tell you what we discussed, but that's a conversation you need to have with him. And I hope that you have it with him soon. And they got together and there was healing. The son moved in with the father and they brought in holistic products.
Yeah.
He was healed. He was healed. So together emotionally, and then with, products that help you, that you're not caustic or, that are, you're getting, so much of what we put in our bodies.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good segue into what you offer the world today.
Yeah. That story touched me. And you just said it caustic, and then you said simplicity, because I have done all the woo-woo stuff in the world with spirituality. Like, I went through the Gateway experience, and I've done a lot of things trying to find answers, but in dealing with my recovery, in recovery. So I played professional roller derby, and I can't say that it was a very long journey, but it messed me up pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And there might have been some underlining issues before that, or some things that were genetic or whatnot. But pain management had popped up at the time in my early 20s, and I got fixated on it, basically. So being in recovery, pain was such a trigger. It was a trigger for me. And holistically, I did not want to take Tylenol every day. And so I guess in getting with some of the products, and it's so good because you telling that story, like, our bodies can tell us what we need.
Mm-hmm.
And just a little bit of research, like, you find it, once you get out there and start buying cleaner ingredients, we're talking about cents, maybe $1. We're not talking about dollars more or anything. And I know a lot of people, that's one of their, they say, barriers is because, oh, it's too expensive. It's really not. Because when you eat better ingredients, cleaner, for me, organic, and I'm not a organic savage person. I mean, I went to Ichiban yesterday. It's not even enjoying, like, consciously, I can tell myself at Ichiban, like, this food's going to make me skinny, and really believe it,
Yeah.
So I'm not just a complete savage when it comes to that. But when you do eat cleaner and organic, what you find out is it sustains you more. So in return, you're not spending a whole lot of money. Me and my partner, he was on night shift, and so I was having to eat alone and everything. And it's just easy for me to meal prep. I'll just throw some chicken or a meat and some vegetables in the oven, and then that's my, and meal prep that, and I'm sustained for at least 4 days. But I guess with the sea moss, you want me to start that story?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was diagnosed with sciatica when I was 26, and I also am diagnosed with migraines. That was, I guess, before recovery era. In recovery, I found out I had scoliosis. Sciatica, if you don't have it, it's like a constant, Anyway, it's just painful. And being in my early 30s, I'm 37 now, and anyway, the pain was just really triggering, and I could not, fighting with the guilt of, am I going to have to take some kind of Neurontin or some kind of non addicting like, no, I'm not. There's things out there. So, and I did. I meditated and prayed over it for a very, very long time, and I started coming across Dr. Sebi. Have you ever heard of Dr. Sebi?
That rings a bell.
Not even a doctor, but he lived in a different country, and I came across sea moss. It was a sea vegetable. They call it sea vegetable, and it comes from the ocean, and basically detoxing his body. And for him, he was curing people's diseases. And I just started doing a lot more research on it. And then I found a guy that I went to school with in Clinton, Sean. He had made his own sea moss gel. So I ordered one of his. It tasted really good. And until I started making my own sea moss for me. And after 3 weeks, the pain subsided for me. But I don't want to say that that's going to happen for everybody, because we have to do things with intention. And my intention going into that was that it was going to help, especially with all the research that I did. And I've been doing that for the last 3 years. And with that day of creating Transcending Wellness, marketing is not my forte. But I know that friends and community, especially our community of people, we're very, I guess, inquisitive people. So, and people would just start asking me about the sea moss, and I will even give it away, just for people to learn about this special thing. So right now I've got about 4 repeat customers, and that just warms my heart. And on top of that, they're getting the wellness shots as well. So
what is the wellness shot?
So it has lemon, lime, ginger, and turmeric in it.
Okay.
There can be some more additives in it. Like one customer, I put black pepper in it because it helps digest the curcumin in the turmeric, so to speak. But I like the people who don't necessarily like the idea of seaweed, I will put the Celtic salt in the wellness shot because it has a lot of the same minerals and nutrients, because Celtic salt comes from the ocean too. And I believe in benefits of what divine source has created. So even organic ingredients and organic products aren't necessarily from, I guess, the world or from God, but I do know the difference between organic and inorganic. And I do want to say this, like a lot of organic products, if you have some precious organic ingredients and then you start throwing in the chemicals and stuff, the organic part of that is no longer active, and it breaks my heart to see that, like, because I have sea moss as a product, I'll get these advertisements that pop up, and I'll start doing research, and it's like, well, this person doesn't say what kind of fruits are in there anyway.
Yep.
But it's just so sad that people are marketing, because you didn't have that 5 years ago, But
it's just wonderful to know that there's someone who is integrous.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
That's because you're right. You have all kinds of things being thrown at you day in and day out. And, people are looking for answers and they're looking for help. And, the phone is the quickest thing. And they look at their phone and they find something and they click on it. And we don't know what we're putting in our systems,
Yeah.
and even water. I mean, I've read a book recently about just this gentleman that put water and sees the beautiful crystals that are made out of, when water is pure. But when you add things like fluoride and,
Yeah.
we don't. It's so important what we put into our bodies, and I'm learning that.
Yeah.
I'm a slow learner, but I've changed up what I eat, and it's making a difference, and I'm really excited about trying your sea moss. So thank you for the gift
You're
today.
welcome.
And I love mango. So, well, Brittany, thank you so much for being here with us today, for being willing, for being brave and courageous and saying yes. Yes is a powerful word.
Well, 2023, I was going to say no.
That's right. But it's not 2023
Yeah.
anymore. And we are evolving every day, my friend. So excited for your future and what lays ahead for you and
Thank
for the world
Thank you,
because of
Rick.
your kindness. Thank you. I want to put up Brittany's contact information. If Danny would do that for me. There we have it. So Brittany's website is transcendingwellness.square.site. Her social media links for Facebook, and I love this, Brittany, because this is something I learned the hard way. It's Transcending Wellness LLC for everything, which is so consistent. So for someone who says that you're not whatever, you did this right. Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, it's Transcending Wellness LLC for all of them. So please check her out. Friend her on Facebook, follow her, see all the good things that she has coming out, and make a choice, make a decision. We are the ones who get to choose how we live our lives. We're responsible for our lives. No one else is. So let's make a choice to live more healthy and reach out to Brittany and find out what she's got going on. Thank you so much for being
Thank you,
here.
Rick.
You can find all my social media links, including all of our videos that we record here on YouTube, coaching opportunities, a couple of little books I've written, along with a library of books that I've read that have been life-changing for me on my spiritual journey. They're all on my website at theawakenedcollective.org. Thank you for joining us today. Again, reach out to Brittany. And thank you to Daniel Anderson and Audio Alchemy Productions. Don't forget the Sons of Sobriety. Until next time, my friends, love and kindness always.